hired in 1971, and I retired in May 2001. I stayed out a year completely, and then I've come back to work since then. I had a couple other part-time things that I did, one at Citrus, one at IVC, one at Palm Desert, but for the most part, for the last, 10 years or so, I've worked part-time as a counselor and supplemented my retirement income to travel. So we've done a lot of traveling since I retired. In fact, we have another trip coming up next month. We're going to France. So anyhow, that's the story is full-time employment between 71 and 2001 and part-time since then. I was working as a counselor at Taft College in West Kern County, and my first year there was 1968. I taught English at Fresno City Unified District for 5 years. When I was hired as a 3/5 counselor, 3/5 English teacher, 2/5 counselor, with the understanding that the following year, when the coordinator of student activities retired, that I would be assuming that position. As it turned out, in my first semester there, he became ill, and they asked me to accompany a group of students to the then called the CSJC SGA, California Student Government Association. Conference was in Fresno, which I'd just come from. But at any rate, I accompanied a group of students to that conference in Fresno and met Jack Schwartzbaugh, who was in his first year at Saddleback College. It was the year it opened. And we met at a workshop for new student government advisors. And so that's when I heard about Saddleback College. And back to Taft, I did pick up student activities, and then I picked up coordinator of student activities, and then they were talking the following year of picking up the residence halls, which they had in Taft. And so I was looking around because I really was committed to the idea of doing counseling. That was my training. I left Fresno Unified District because there was a counseling position open at Taft, and so that's what I was really looking for, was a full-time job. And I kept in touch with Jack, and I met Bill Kelly. Came down just to look around, and there was an opening that I applied for and got the job as a full-time counselor.
In the Irvine World News, there was a job announcement, and not even in an educational journal, that they were looking for a German/ESL instructor. And I had my PhD and 3 years experience teaching German and no real official training teaching ESL, but 3 years experience. And this was in 1977, probably well before minimal quals came into being, and also before there were a lot of graduate programs in ESL. So I was hired in fall 77. Saddleback was in my backyard. And my husband was at UCI, so it was really a wonderful, wonderful thing to be hired.
Well, I started as an adjunct faculty librarian in 1988. I was working as a full-time librarian at Cerritos College in LA County, but I really wanted to get into Saddleback. So I started at the same time working as an adjunct librarian in 1988. Then in December 1989, I was hired full-time tenure track, and my position was library instruction coordinator. I was at Saddleback until I retired in 2006. And I just have to say, it just was a wonderful experience. In the late 80s, most academic librarians at the time wanted to be at Saddleback College. It was a wonderful place to work. Great reputation, great faculty, really sharp, interesting faculty, great students, a lot of tenure, or a lot of transfer students, yeah, and good facilities, and it was just really a beautiful campus. I don't know, maybe the budget was different back then. It just seemed beautiful. There were lots of flowers and trees, and I remember walking out of the front door of the library, and you would look out and you would just see the rolling hills, and it was just this panorama, and no buildings, no development, no houses. It really was just exhilarating to look at. It was really beautiful, and I just felt so fortunate to be here, and I stayed at Saddleback until I retired at age 55 in 2006.
I came on in 1977, 78, and actually I was in a graduate class at Cal State Fullerton, and my professor said in Leisure World, it was Leisure World at that time, they're running a class down there, would you be interested in going down, anybody in class be interested in going down and maybe teaching a class, an exercise class. And I said I would. When I got down there, it was the Adult Education Department at Saddleback College was running a class in Leisure World. So I applied for it and got the job, and I was teaching. I taught, I think, a semester for them and was teaching multiple classes by that time. And before you know it, Proposition 13 came up, and Saddleback College sort of surrounded those adult ed programs at the K-12 and brought them on board as the Emeritus Institute. I was one of 2 faculty that came on board full-time, and that was really my first job in this business out of school and out of graduate school. Before that, I was an industrial engineer with McDonnell Douglas, and I had gone back to school, and so it just kind of worked out. And I was here for a very, very long time, and the only place I ever worked after I got out of school, and I really have loved it.
I first started Saddleback College as a temporary hire, and that would have been late summer of 1977. And I continued to work in that capacity until April 1979, and then I was hired as a permanent person. Okay. In admissions and records. Always in admissions and records. Yes.
Well, it was April of '75 when I started at Saddleback College. And the reason why I started at Saddleback College, I wanted to change somewhat my career. It just so happened Saddleback was hiring at the time, and I figured if I could get hired, I could go to school and do 2 things at once here. Well, it ended up I came out to apply for a position which was a grounds position, and come to find out you had to have a degree just to get on the grounds position. Most of them had horticultural degrees, and they knew quite a bit about the fertilizers and the different things on the grounds, which I figured all you had to know about is cutting grass and picking weeds, things like that. Well, I had talked with a man named Bob Brewer, and Bob and I, we talked, I'll bet you, probably for about an hour. And finally he says, I'm sorry I can't help you with it. He says, with a little luck, something may come up later. So I went home, and it was about a week or 2 later, he called me back. And he says, you know, Terry, he says, I liked how you carried yourself, and I liked what you were talking about. He says, we just happened to have a couple of positions open at night as a custodian. Would you be interested? And I says, well, I'd have to really think about the custodial position. Money-wise was a little bit less than what I was making. So I said, let me think about it. So I went home, talked to Mary, and we thought, well, with what Saddleback was offering and my GI Bill and what we had in savings, I could probably do it for a couple of years.
Started actually in November of '76. And the reason I came out here is Terry, of course, as he just said, was already working here, and he came home and told me that there was a position available in the financial aid office and that I should apply. Well, I had just decided, and we had decided because of financial and our 4 children, that I needed to go back to work full time. I had put in an application with the bank at that time, but I thought, well, what can I lose? So I did go out and apply, and I really thought I didn't have a prayer to get a position out at the college because I hadn't worked outside of the home for quite a few years because, you know, when the kids were young. And so thought I can't lose anything by trying, and I did get the job. Mary Long was actually the first financial aid officer on Saddleback, on the campus. And I think going back to this day, that she hired me because she liked my banking background. Her husband, who had passed away not long before that, had been in banking. And I think I had a little bit of an edge there, and she was wonderful. And so I stayed the whole time in financial aid. I went to different positions. I can't remember all of them. I know I was an associate and an assistant director, and I don't know if I really knew what quite the difference was. Maybe the money, I hope. And eventually, at the end of my career, I was became the director of the financial aid programs. And I think I had that position for about 5 years before I finally retired in, excuse me, March, my voice, March of 2011.
How many years overall then?
I had 34 and a half years that I worked at the college, all in financial aid.
And you, Terry?
I had I ended up being about 22 years.
22 years.